fabulous 142. Welcome to another episode of Lindsay's Library. Today I'm going to be reading Chapter 27 of Ella Enchanted, written by Gail Carson Levine. Let's get started. A few guests were still arriving when my carriage reached the castle. Before I emerged, I made certain my mask was securely tied. I had been here before, as a week-old infant, brought to meet my sovereign, but not since. The hall was twice as tall as Mum Olga's. Every wall was covered with tapestries, hunting scenes, court scenes, pastoral scenes. Along the walls to my right and to my left, a line of marble pillars marched to the end of the hall. I tried not to gape. Soon I'd be counting windows. "Mistress," a young squire offered me a glass of wine. It was delightful not to be a servant. "The prince is greeting his guests. There is the queue." He waved at a file of courtiers, mostly women, that wound from the huge double doors to the prince, a small figure at the far reach of the hall. Most of the women had already unmasked, so Char would be sure to see their lovely eyes or classical noses. The squire added, "They're each scheming to make the prince propose marriage on the spot." He bowed. "Dance with me, lady. The line will wait." In order. A group of musicians played near the prince, and perhaps a dozen guests danced. "With pleasure," I said, pitching my voice a tone lower than usual. My eyes kept straying from my partner. Char smiled at each guest, bowed, nodded, spoke. Once he laughed. Making him laugh had been my domain. The damsel who caused the laughter was of middle height, slender, with blonde, wavy hair cascading to her waist. She had removed her mask, but her back was turned, so I couldn't see her face. Hattie and Olive and Mum Olga weren't in line. They were probably off eating somewhere, but Hattie would certainly return soon. She wouldn't leave a room for long while Char occupied it. My dance ended as the clock struck the quarter before 10. "Thank you," I said. "No squire can hold a lady's attention tonight." He left me. Just over 2 hours remained. I retired to a chair at the edge of the hall, as close to Char as I dared. 3 gentlemen asked me to dance, but I declined each invitation. I became simply a pair of eyes, staring through my mask at Char. I needed no ears, because I was too far off to hear his voice. No words, because I was too distant for speech. And no thoughts. Those I saved for later. He bent his head. I loved the hairs on the nape of his neck. He moved his lips. I admired their changing shape. He clasped a hand. I blessed his fingers. Once, the power of my gaze drew his eyes. I looked away quickly and noticed Hattie, hovering a few feet beyond the line. Her lips clenched in a fawning smile. He spoke to the last guest. Last but one. My resolution to be unseen gave way. The last in line would be me. I rose and hurried to reach him before Hattie could pounce. I curtsied. He bowed. Then we both straightened. I found I had grown closer to his height. "What is your name, lady?" He smiled politely. I found my voice with difficulty. "Lele." We were silent. "Do you live here in Frel, Lady Lele?" "In Bast, Highness. I named a town near the Elves' Forest." He looked past me, ready to move on. "I hope you enjoy the ball and your stay in Frel." I couldn't let him go. À bien sûr, Ahodo, Ensini imi esete, Irubo Amofu. I spoke with a heavy Korean accent. You speak a Yorthian? His attention was captured. Not well. My uncle was born there. He's a singer. His voice can charm wood. Char's smile was genuine now. I miss their songs. I was glad to leave, but now I miss everything. I hummed a stanza of Arita's favorite song. A sad one, about a farmer whose family is starving. Char joined me, singing softly. Near us, heads turned. I saw Hattie frown, with her smile still frozen in place. When we finished, he bowed again. Would you favor me with a dance? Over all the others, I was his choice. I curtsied, and he took my hand. Our hands knew each other. Char looked at me, startled. Have we met before, lady? I've never left Bast, but I've longed to see Frau my whole life, he nodded. The clock struck 11. The dance was a gavotte, too spirited for talk. Rapid movement was a relief in the midst of so much feeling. We flew through the hall, perfectly in step. Char smiled at me. I smiled back, happy. We separated. I twined my arms with a succession of momentary partners, dukes, earls, knights, squires, and back to Char. A final whirl, and the dance ended. I love a gavotte, I said, touching to make sure my mask was still properly in place. The rush, the sweep, the whoosh. What nonsense was I talking? It's the same with stair rails, the same feeling, he said. Do you like to slide? His voice was eager. Stair rails? Did he suspect me? I forced a sigh. No, Majesty. I'm terrified of heights. Oh. His polite tone had returned. Do I what? Like to slide down stair rails? Oh, yes, I used to. I wish I could enjoy it. This fear of heights is an affliction. He nodded, a show of sympathy, but not much interest. I was losing him. Especially, I added, as I've grown taller. He stared. Then he laughed in surprised delight. I was a fool for behaving so much like myself. The clock struck the half-hour. Char started. 11:30? I've neglected my guests. He became the courteous host again. Refreshments are in the next room, if you care to partake of them. He waved at an archway. Then, I'll look for you later. He hoped to see me again. Lele, that is. I hurried out of the hall. Outside, the fleet had stopped. The pumpkin coach glistened in a line of black carriages. I climbed in. We arrived at home. When we arrived at home, the coachman handed me out, remounted, and flicked his whip. The horses started off. In the morning, Hattie told me about her share in the ball, bidding me to sit on a low stool while the family ate their breakfast. He danced with me, Hattie said, her teeth stained purple from a blueberry muffin. And only good manners prevented him from spending the rest of the evening at my side. When will you pay me? Olive asked. Must I pay? Aren't you glad you danced with the prince? You said you'd give me 3 coins for every time he couldn't dance with anyone else because of me. You owe me, she thought, 8 coins. How many times did he dance with you? I asked. 3 times. I asked him 4 times, but the last time he said he had to see to his other guests. I vowed not to approach Char during the second ball. It was too dangerous. The evening was clear, but Lucinda provided the coach anyway. My tiara and pendant were pink roses. My gown was a silvery blue with a pale purple petticoat. Tonight there was no receiving line. I searched for a seat where I'd have a clear view of the dance, and where others would have a poor view of me. I found one in a recess, partially blocked by a giant fern in a stone pot. I scrutinized Char's dancing partners, although I knew I had no right to resent a rival. He danced 3 times with the yellow-haired wench who'd made him laugh the night before. She wore no mask and was lovely. I couldn't leave him to her. The clock struck the half hour. Soon it would be 11. I checked my mask, then left my hiding place, and stood with the others who observed the dance. Char saw me. Over the shoulder of his partner, he mouthed, "Wait for me." I grew roots. An earthquake could not have moved me. The clock struck 11:15. It struck 11. If it had struck the end of the world, I'd have stayed as I was. The final figure ended, and he came to me. "Will you dance?" he asked. "I looked for you." Did I have time? I accepted his arm, and we stepped into the dance. A slow sarabande. "I was here all the while. I watched you." "What did you see?" An excellent host, who had little real enjoyment in the ball, except when he danced with the blonde beauty. Was it so apparent? It was to me. He changed the subject. "Will you be here tomorrow?" "My father has asked me to perform an Eyorthian song." "When will you sing?" "Before midnight, please." "Sometime late," he grinned. "If I'm lucky, many of my guests will have gone. They needn't all hear their future ruler disgrace himself." "There will be no disgrace. Not if you were taught in Eyorthia." "What will you sing?" "A homecoming song." He sang in my ear. "Oak, granite, lilies by the road. Remember me, I remember you. Clouds brushing, clover hills. Remember me, sister child, grown tall. Remember me, I remember you." The dance ended, and he stopped. "There's more. I want you to hear it." I resolved to stay late the next night. I'd managed to reach home without Lucinda's gifts. Even if I had to swim, I'll be delighted to, but I must leave now tonight. I'm expected by 12. How close to midnight was it now? He would think it odd if my jewelry vanished. "Oh, I'd hoped. I'm sorry, I mustn't." He bowed. I curtsied. "Till tomorrow, Majesty. One last thing." He caught my hand. "Please call me Char." And that ends Chapter 27 of Ella Enchanted, written by Gail Carson Levine. I hope you have enjoyed this episode of Lindsay's Library. If you did, please be sure to like and subscribe. And also, if you want, you can check out my links down in the description below. The first of which is for my affiliate with So Sick Clothing. There's a promo code through them that will get you 15% off site-wide. That promo code is Elrace15. And there's also a couple of merch links. The first is for the Lovecraft website, which has my t-shirts with the llamas and deers on them. And the second is for my Teespring store. And the rest of my links are my podcast, El Grace After Hours. For those of you who don't know, that's the show. That is the show where I talk about my life as a YouTuber off camera. And there's new episodes every Tuesday. And that's available on Anchor, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, pretty much any podcast platform you can think of. And the last thing is my website and my social media. Thank you for watching, and above all else, stay fabulous. Bye!